All right, so one of the most fluid and creative route setters out there, a head setter for USA comps all over the country, an established coach who's been impressing upon the next generation of rock climbers for years, a fantastic dancer with a taste for adventure, and known as much for his divine flowing locks as he is for the mastery of his craft. Dihedral listeners, along with Casen, I'm Carrot, and today we present to you the great Morgan Young. Welcome to the show, Morgan.
Oh man, thanks for having me. That's the most epic intro I've ever heard in my life.
No, I mean, it's all true, though. So before we get started talking to Morgan, I just wanted to share a quick story about one of my first interactions with Morgan. I was bouldering, and I was trying to send my first V5, and I just couldn't get the crux. Like, it just wasn't going. I was just like cross, and I was falling off, and it just wasn't working. And I'm like trying to work my feet. I'm trying to work everything. And Morgan shows up, and I have to start begging him for beta. I'm just like, Morgan, come on. Like, he didn't even set the route. I just knew he knew how to do it. I was like, just give me some beta, Morgan. And Morgan doesn't give beta easily. He's kind of like a miser with information. But I begged him, and eventually Morgan was just like, just bump. But it was a huge bump that I would have never envisioned. I just needed to get that cross. But I made the bump. I got my feet up and sent my first V5. So, Morgan, my first question to you is, why don't you like giving beta?
I don't think it's that I don't like giving beta. I think it's more of a, once I start, it's just a downward spiral. People like expect me to just like give in and do it all the time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think as a route setter, you're in this like position where you're always working. So even when you're not, you're there to train or you're there to do something. Like, people know who you are and they know the information they want.
That's right.
And so if I kind of go in with like, I'm not going to give it to you, then you're not going to ask me.
Yeah. You'll have at least a couple minutes where you can breathe without being attacked by everybody. So I was actually going to start with a few just preliminary questions. First off, how long have you been climbing and how did you start climbing?
Goodness. I started in maybe late 2004, early 2005. So we're talking 14, 15 years now.
All right.
Am I doing my math right?
Sounds good.
I had a girlfriend. She was in a club in college, and she was like, hey, we're going to the climbing gym. You want to go? And I was like, yeah, of course. I'd been thinking about going to check it out in the first place, and I think that's kind of why actually she like took it there. She looked into it and thought it was cool, and I walked in, and it was like love at first sight. They couldn't get rid of me. So,
were you a natural?
The girlfriend or the...
Well, the girlfriend got rid of me. I don't blame her. I don't blame her for that one, but
I don't blame
her. No. There was something about climbing that I was instantly attracted to. So yeah, it was a little gym, Austin Rock Gym in Austin.
All right, so that gets you, girl. That makes sense. What was your move from climbing into route setting?
It wasn't much. Like I said, I think I was honestly in the gym for like 6 days a week. I would take a day off. And, I think at some point I remember asking, hey, can I set a route? And the front desk was like, yeah, whatever, do what you want. I don't care. And, so I was, putting holds on the wall, and finally management came up and was like, you can't do this. I'm like, what do you mean? The guy at front desk said I could do it. He's like, no, you can't do this. He's like, but we said on Sundays if you want to come in. Like, you seem to be doing an okay job. I was like, cool.
Were you doing an okay job?
I have
looking back then.
Probably looking back, no. I had no idea what I was doing. Probably been climbing for maybe 6 months. And so, I mean, back then it was literally like we met on Sundays, ate pizza and drank beer and put holds on the wall. And
right. I was going to ask that. When you first started setting, it's not like it was today. There weren't like crews of setters who had years of experience under their belt.
I think there might have been in some of the bigger gyms
okay.
in the country, but I mean, for the most part, yeah, it was just the local climbers and the guys that worked at the gym, and that was the day we set.
So did you have a person who kind of took you under their wing to mentor you?
Eventually. So right while I was not working there, I was climbing there. I was setting for fun, And then they got a new owner and they hired a head setter. And then I started working under this guy, Conrad Schaefer, who's no longer in the industry. He got out pretty quick, actually. So I would say he was definitely my first, like, kind of mentor. But the reality is, like, he didn't really know what was going on either. I think he was doing a little research. I think he was from the Northeast, and from some of the bigger gyms, and kind of saw how things worked and knew people. So he was taking their ideas and rolling with it. Looking back now, he was definitely on the right track. Like, I remember how organized he was and some ideas he had about everything, and it's actually kind of on par for what's going on right now. So,
but he's out of the game.
He's out of the game.
He
had his master's in geology, and
okay.
I think he eventually was like, "Oh, I think there's more money in this."
He's playing a different game now. Yeah.
I'm out of here.
So ever since I first started climbing, I always felt like setting was kind of the pinnacle of whatever I wanted to do. And so I would always go around asking people, like, can I set on your wall? Can I set on your wall? And everyone was like, you're kind of a squirt. You can't set.
It's different now. It's really weird. I think you have to... I think at the start is just like jump in a gym. Like, okay, I'm going to work behind the desk and I'm just going to like bug these guys until it finally happens. And I think there's like a certain level of like, hey, we want you to be so strong. Because I think there's an understanding of movement that we're looking for. And then, so if you're a V2 climber and you want to set, like, what do you bring to the table? Not much. You really don't understand movement all that well. So, not to say that, you know, some V10 climbers understand movement. Some guys can just grab and pull and you throw them on slab and they can't do V2 slab.
Sure.
That might be an overstatement, but, like some guys that can climb V10 on overhung boulders, you throw them on like V3 slab and it's foreign game to them. Mm-hmm. They have no idea what's going on. So as route setters, like we should, in theory, have a good understanding of overall movement.
So I climb at the gym that you sit at, and I bought a bunch of holds myself, and, you know, I make routes at home and stuff, and I find that I like climbing on yours a lot better. And I think it's really important to figure out that formula for movement.
Yeah. And it's hard if you don't understand it, you're not going to like just all of a sudden come up with it. Like, oh, I just came up with this crazy idea. So
I'm wondering if you can take us through, all right, you're about to, a wall's been stripped. You know what you want to set. Let's say it's going to be some sport routes. I don't know if you lay in bed thinking about like what you're going to do the next day. I probably would. But from inception to completion of a route, like let's say you're just going to try to set a route that, I don't know if I would call it a masterpiece, but if you're just like, I'm going to blow some people's minds with this route, how do you start on that? What's the thought process to that? And like go us through the completion, the tweaks, all of it.
I don't know, pure luck. No, I think it's hard to come up with, like, I don't like, I'm not in the middle of the night, just like wake up and like, holy cow, I'm going to go do this move now. Especially when it comes to commercial route setting. I don't really know what holds we have in the back at this point anymore. Like, I don't know, maybe I want to use these holds in red, and then like they got used yesterday on a V0 and I was like super soaked. And so now I have to change my ideas of how things are going to work. So I don't know necessarily what I have to work with when I walk in. So usually it's kind of strip, and I know a grade. I know what can work within the grade, and I just kind of go with it. If I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff done in the day, you're going to get a more generic Morgan Young product.
Yeah.
If I have time, I'm going to sit there and try and do something a little new, a little different. So I think that's the hardest part, is just always pushing yourself. So
has that been a change throughout your career? I mean, I've just seen you at this point where you can just look at a route and be like, that needs to move and that needs to move and that needs to move. Did you spend more time thinking about what you wanted to do as you were getting into setting?
And what do you mean? Like,
it's kind of like that laying in bed, like I'm gonna set this, like, I don't know, figure 4, whatever it is that you want to throw on a route.
No, I think it was all trial and error, and then eventually I could just start eyeing it. You know, I don't know. There was really, until I got into the USA climbing system, it was kind of on my own.
Okay.
Essentially. So I would say what we call commercial setting is what I was doing. Just grab and pull. I was climbing outside a bunch. So, that's what I was going off of, what I was doing outside. And then once you get into the competitive world, it's just like everything, just take that, throw it out the door, and like, let's get wild with it.
Yeah.
And that's where like new ideas start rolling in. You're like, whoa, like cool. Like I'm going to huck myself, swing, catch something. And then like, I don't know, like do something wild off that, like when do you go outside and just like throw yourself around, and then, so I think that's, watching the evolution of like what's going on and like this more parkour style and adding that into it. And, yeah, it's just like pushing limits. And then I'm sure there was a point at some point they were like, you can't run and jump and do all these crazy things. And someone was like, well, let's just try it. Like,
right. I kind of.
And now it's like a normal thing. You see it all the time.
It's like the first person who dunked a basketball in the NBA. They're just like, what just happened? And now we've got
alley-oop.
Sick dino. Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a huge criticism of competitive climbing that people are saying like, well, this is just parkour because there's a lot of jumping and a lot of swinging and moves like that. Why do you think that competitive climbing has leaned towards that? And do you think that it's a good or a bad thing?
The reason it's leaned that way is it's inherently like riskier. So these guys are just, I think they're too strong. Like if you give them grab and pull, they can all do it. It's all day long. So if you give them something that they have to do 3 things at once, your chances of that happening go down, or like if they know what to do, sometimes maybe it takes them 2-3 tries to actually like stick it and do it right. So it allows for errors to be made. And then rather than just, I can hold on to this tiny hold. I think if you go and look back at some of the older comp videos, like it was just grab and pull. It was generic, like outside, and people weren't 515C climbers yet, Yeah. And now they all climb V15 and like 515B or whatever. So if you're going to just give them a small crimp, they're going to be like, oh, cool. Yeah, I know what to do with that.
So talent kind of forced like a change in the way that you guys set or had to set.
A little bit, I think so.
And what's the difference between your mentality going into setting for a comp versus setting for a gym?
It's drastically different. I'm trying to get separation out of this, whoever I'm setting for, right? So I need a clear like first place, last place, maybe like 1st through 6th is my like clear order. So like I have to walk in understanding like who am I setting for? Am I setting for 6-year-olds or am I setting for pro climbers? Because that changes everything, right? But even then, like the 6 and like 8-year-old, 9-year-olds are just like, well, you can do that now. That's cool. Okay. Wasn't expecting that.
Who's the most difficult climber that you ever had to set for? Where you're just like, I need to do something different so that this just isn't sent.
Oh man, that's a hard one. I don't think I have a particular person. There was a time that, so Nick Milburn, who just sent Dreamcatcher, was in our region. And it was him and this kid, Joe Gifford. And they were, it was like basically neck and neck, just like back and forth. You never knew who was going to win. And those were always that was just like, okay, I have to find a way to separate these guys. And then sometimes it was just didn't happen. You're like, cool. All right. Well, they tied. Great. I suck at my job.
So what do you look for between those two guys? Like, are you watching YouTube videos of each of them or?
You got to remember, like I'm throwing names out, but Nick was a 17-year-old kid. I don't know how old he is now. It was probably 10 years ago. Yeah. I've also think I've grown quite a bit. Like I think my understanding of movement has changed quite a bit. A lot has changed. Like there's volumes all of a sudden. There's bigger holds. There's all sorts of different holds. Back then it was like I could literally tell you every single name of the holds.
Oh yeah.
Like we're like, oh, I need you to go get this hold and this one particular. It's a little bit more in cut. You're like, oh yeah, I know that one. And you like run off and go grab it. Now I'm like, yeah, that company that has this, and you're just like, sure. So it's just a guessing game now. I couldn't tell you any of the names anymore. So I think a lot has evolved, a lot has changed. I think I've grown as well. I think that would have gone a long ways back then. So,
do you find yourself like wishing for the old days when things were simpler, or?
No. Well, I think I long for setting for climbers. In the sense that like like the people that were in the gym were also like training to be outside. Where I think now there's like, oh, I really enjoy rock climbing. I'm like, do you go outside? No, in the gym. Like, not that those, I mean, that's the majority of our customers. That's who we're setting for. I think, but there's just this connection of like talking about routes and then you're like, oh, it's kind of like this, or it's got this feel. And you do that now. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, they have no idea. I love where the industry's gone. I love that there's so many people interested and that have like fallen in love with the sport that I have, you know, and I feel really blessed that I literally fell into it. Like it did not mean to be where I'm at today. I was just like kind of in the right place at the right time.
So you work on a route. You think it's good, bad, who cares? But you overhear climbers talking when people are in the gym and they kind of take a shit on your route, or they're just like, what was this setter thinking? Like, how do you embrace that? Do you take it as like constructive criticism, or are you just like, you don't know anything? Like, you're not in a place to judge what I do. Yeah,
I am definitely guilty of that for sure. I think early in my career, I was very open to it. I think now, let's say if like someone's only been climbing for 6 months and they're just like, oh, like I climb V2 all the time and I can't do this V2. And I'm like, well, is it possible? Maybe I just gave you something at that level you've never seen, you know? Or, you know, maybe it's just classic Morgan where I'm sandbagging everything. I mean, that's a very real possibility. But on the other hand, if we treat it, I'm trying to create a product, right? And it should be consistent to some degree. Maybe I messed that up. I think I'm usually the first to tell you if my product sucks or if I think it sucks. And people are like, no, it's good. I'm like, no, it's a pile. Like, I hate that climb. Don't get on it.
Pretty honest. No one's gonna accuse you about being otherwise.
So I don't take it too hard. I think people want to get to the top and feel successful, and when you take that away from them, it's upsetting. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I think at some point when you get stronger too, you're just like, oh, like grades are somewhat irrelevant. Yeah. It's I enjoy the movement.
Right.
And if I do something that feels really hard, then even better, you know?
So there's a lot of people out there that I would call them like grade chasers. Like they're always kind of looking for the next level. They're always looking for what's the next grade that I can get. And I was definitely that, like when I first started climbing. And I think that just comes from that competitiveness. But I also think that like those people aren't the ones that last as long as the people who are just climbing for the love of climbing.
Yeah, well, I think potentially too, they get hurt a lot. Or at least the ones that I've known, they're like, next grade. And you're just like, dude, you need to calm down a little bit. And they're like, no. And then like all of a sudden they're gone. And you're like, what happened? They're like, oh, I blew a tendon. Like, well, that happens. You went from V0 to V12 in 6 months. Your body just can't maintain it. But on the other side, like I'm still pushing. Like I still want to be stronger, and I'm definitely like getting to an age where I'm like, oh crap. This is kind of I don't think I won't stop getting stronger, but like the speed I can do it at is like going away. So I'm sure I'll sit at a grade for a while and then like all of a sudden do want to be like, but at some point there's going to be a decline, and I'll probably still climb. You know, I like have to go climb like V7 instead of like V9. Like it's going to suck.
Whenever I first started climbing, I wanted to get better, partly because of that competitiveness, but also because I could only climb like 10% of the stuff in the gym. And so I wanted to get better so that way I could climb the more fun, cooler stuff. And it's nice because now I can climb like maybe 30% of the stuff in the gym.
Oh, that is also a fault on ours as route setters, where maybe we're not paying attention to our customers that much. If I had it my way, it'd be harder, but it's not my decision. I'm in a position like typically when I walk in the gym, there's like one climb I can't do, and it's my project, and I've usually set it for myself. No one else touches it. Which is fine, but so I kind of get stuck to like the tension board or the moon board a lot of the time for my training.
If you're wondering how good of a climber Morgan is, that's probably a good
right. Nothing in the gym is something he can't do.
Right.
No, not at all. I just think it's where the state is. I think if in 5 years we'll turn around and see it's gonna be a very different, or like the bell curve will be much higher, and there will be things that like everybody's working on it with. And that goes also back to like the days where I like want people in the gym. Like that's how it was. Like I'd hang out with the Strong Austin crew and you're just like, it was like vice versa. They were like, Morgan, more hard stuff. And I was just like, really? Okay. Like,
Let's go. Let's do it.
Done.
So just on the topic of setting before we move on, if you could give a couple pieces of advice to setters just getting in to the game, what are some do's and don'ts that even a beginning setter could understand?
I think do's are just constantly watch like what's going on in the, like with climbers. And I'm still this way too. Like I think a lot of times we like set something and when we set it and we try it, we get stuck in our view of how it should go. And then someone gets on it and just demolishes that beta that we had. And you're like, like they did it wrong. Reality is just like, no, I didn't force, the movement that I wanted. And so the question is like, well, why? I'm always asking that to my setters, like, why isn't that working? And you kind of get this blank look sometimes, just like, I don't know. You're like, cool, let's think about it. Is it the hand? Is it the foot? Like, what's going on that's making this work? Maybe it's just like the sequence we were trying to do is too difficult for the grade. So they're having to find this like unique way to do it. Whereas if you were stronger, you would probably do it that way. Usually is what I see.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll go and try it this way. Another strong guy will try it this way. Is why we make those mistakes, because we're all stronger. We're doing it the way that we perceive is the easiest way, because maybe it is for us now. Whereas then all of a sudden, like someone newer is like doing this weird match and like, well, they don't understand this movement yet. They haven't developed it.
Right.
So maybe we made the mistake and that has to go into our, little notes and go, okay, can't do it at that level, or maybe this angle, or like, there's so many factors that you're just constantly just kind of like,
so number one, watch what climbers are doing.
What I said, I think when you're a route setter, you're always working. It is, I think the roughest part of being a setter is just like, because even when I'm in there climbing for myself, I'm still watching. Like I'm working. I'm like, why are they doing that? That's weird.
You're talking about me now, right?
Yeah, totally.
You're talking directly.
Why did you do that? And so even when I like go in for myself, it's still kind of a work situation. And I think, that's a hard balance to learn, but that's part of it. Like if you really want to be good and talented, then that's just kind of what you do. You would like literally just live. It's a lifestyle, as weird as that sound. Like,
no, like I was talking before, it's a true craft. Like there's a craftsmanship that goes along with it, and craftsmen don't stop being craftsmen when they go home. Let's say somebody builds tools. How can you ignore somebody else's tools or how somebody's using a tool that you built? Yeah. And I really just look at route setting as a craft. I go back and forth. Sometimes I look at it as an art form, because sometimes I'll get on a route and I'm just like, this person understands certain movements that like I couldn't have done on my own. And it's really kind of a beautiful thing, but I'm not sure if calling it an art form is too much, but it's certainly like a craft that the better you get and the more time you spend on it, the better you'll be at it.
Yeah, it's a craft. I mean, there's just like working with like wood, you have to like know like what you're working with. And like, I'm sure if you're using a certain type of wood over another, like there's other things you can do with it that you can't do with this one. And, it just takes time to learn. And I'm sure just like anything, you learn new tricks here and there and you're like, oh wow, that was cool. Like, wait, how'd you do that? Show me, let's learn. It never stops, or it shouldn't anyways. Right. And when it does, then it sucks. Yeah. It's just a job and it's not fun anymore.
Right. So recently Morgan has been asked or was able to make his own set of climbing holds from Kilter, the Morgan Young signature hold. I was hoping you can tell us how that even happened. And let me just say, there's maybe, Morgan, you would know one other person who has a signature hold in the world. It's you.
No, that's not true.
Okay, maybe two other people, but Morgan's the only one on Kilter who has their own hold. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
Okay, that's basically true.
It was basically what happened is Kilter got a hold of us. They saw that we were opening another gym, potentially a third, which is on the website. So like in their eyes, they're like, oh, they're opening 2 gyms really fast. Let's bring them to Colorado. And basically, let's sell them holds. Like, we're going to fly them in. We're going to put them up in a hotel. And we're just going to bring them to the Kilter workshop. And they have a display of all their holds. It's really neat. So it was a sales tactic on their
What a
part.
good one.
A really fun one.
Yeah.
We had a blast. You know,
That's
they
amazing.
wined and dine us. We're getting food every night, beer.
All right,
Like,
killed
you
it.
know, they're doing. I bought a lot of holds from them,
Yeah.
and somewhere in there, they were just like, "Hey, do you want to go shape holds?" And I was like, "All right." And so I go back there. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, Ian's just like, "Here, use this foam." Like, all right.
That's their head.
Ian's the like head shaper there.
Yeah.
Basically, like, I would say those holds are 75% Ian, 25% Morgan. He's just like, "Oh, that's really cool, Morgan. But what if you did this with it?" And like took 2 seconds to like whittle it down to its shapes, you know?
And how would you describe these holds? Like pinches? Would you say they're
They are like, they're screw on, first of all, so they don't bolt on. And they're kind of range from like slopey crimps to like good in cut crimps.
Yeah.
I think specifically would fit really well on volumes.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of how they were designed in the long run. I think they turned out beautifully. I think I'm also a little biased, but
Yeah.
um,
I checked them out on the website. They're really cool holds. They're really
but
cool.
like once again, like there's if with the original shape I had in mind, there's no way I would have brought it down to what it is now without Ian, like
Yeah.
at all.
Okay.
So he's definitely talk about like art and craft. Like that guy is just like to like sit there and watch him do something is just like mind boggling.
Man.
How he goes from like basically like my piece of shit hold that I had to like what you guys see now, and
Now it's on the
in
website,
foam,
yeah.
you know. That's definitely, like I said, 75% him. So, but they are like, so what that is supposed to be is that they are trying to start, from what I understand, is a company that, you know, route setters come in from across the country, shape, and then that's part of the, I think they're calling haptic, maybe, I don't remember. And then you're supposed to get a percentage of the sales,
Nice.
from what I understand. So maybe I'm way wrong in all of this, and they're
Yeah.
going to call me and be like, "What are you talking about, Morgan?"
You're actually
Don't-
you owe us $4,000.
Yeah. But from what I remember, like, I mean, this is a year and a half ago now, so
Yeah.
I didn't even know they were out.
Okay.
Like I was at a competition in Charlotte, and someone's like, "Oh, I saw your holds," and I was like, "What are you talking about?"
So
My holds.
cool.
They're like, "They're on the kilter site."
Oh man.
What?
So I was wondering if we could talk for a little while about the biggest changes that you've seen from what climbing gyms were when you first started to just where they are and how they're everywhere now. And I also was hoping we could take that into the direction of what you think happens next. Like, is this sustainable, the amount of gyms that are going up, and do you think it's going to get bigger? My thought is that they're going to have to start setting harder routes like we were talking about before, but I'm wondering if you could kind of go from past to where we are today and kind of the direction you see heading into the next 5 or 10 years.
Sure. Yeah.
Is outdoor climbing dying?
By any means. I can tell you that for a fact. Like when I was in San Diego, one of the main bouldering areas we were going to, they were getting pretty close to shutting it down because there's so much people coming from San Diego and LA. It was basically like a triangle that like shot directly to this called Black Mountain. Amazing area that and then there's just so much traffic coming in, and I think a lot of people weren't being mindful of the campgrounds. We were just kind of like romping through people's campgrounds, eating trash, dog fights. Like it's just kind of a, people, I don't know, dog fights, man. Yeah, just the pit bulls up there, and like there's something about climbers that every climber feels like their dog's perfect, and they always like attack people or attack other dogs. They're like, no, it's fine. It's like,
Our dog doesn't need
So true.
so yeah, there was a letter that went out. They're like, hey, like you guys need to check yourself. And there's no way, obviously California is a big climbing spot, but for sure all the gyms popping up in, LA and San Diego are pushing people outside. You're probably only seeing 5%, but when you have 3,000 members here, 3,000 members there,
Right.
You have a total of, 100,000 members. I mean, that's a bigger number, but you take 5% of that and put them in a mountain. It's a lot of people.
Interesting that number is only 5%, because I don't know if it's the person that got me into climbing that gave me this mindset, but for me, when I started, climbing indoors was always about training to climb outside.
Yeah. And I think especially in Spire when it first opened, it's oddly, there was a big climbing scene already here. And it's kind of the same situation. They were all going outside. I knew them in the Austin area because I saw them all the time outside. And they were strong. It was like ridiculous. Like the Houston crew was just like dumb strong. Still are. I think, so when you first walked in, that was kind of the mentality. And I think for a little bit it grew, and then it just got so big, and it was just, you know, their own cliques kind of follow their own cliques. And I think some people just want to be inside. They don't want to be outside. And that's fine. So I think you only see a small percentage, but as more gyms open, you know, gyms are hitting like 1,000 to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. Take 5% of that, you know, each one that's opening up, and send them outside. It's a big difference. And like, especially here in the, you know, our part of the country where Reimer's Ranch is the closest thing. So every gym that opens in Houston, you take 5% of that. The gyms that are opening in San Antonio, Dallas, and then plus what's already in Houston or in Austin, that's also growing still. The impact's pretty huge. So it's happening everywhere. So it's definitely not dying, which is cool. And I think things are happening in a good way. Like Texas now, it's like law. The governor just signed it a few weeks ago, basically saying that climbing on private land, you can't sue the landowner. So maybe we're going to start seeing a bunch of crags opening up all of a sudden. Yeah. Hopefully. That's the hope, right? And so maybe we can kind of spread it out a little bit, you know. I'm for sure that there's got to be more climbing in Central Texas. And,
has to be.
That's just on like private land that no one ever talks about. So that's the hope. But like kind of going back into it, gosh, at least when I started, you know, from what I understand about the history of climbing gyms, it kind of went from like woody, like made up holds, you know, and like plastic holds that people were kind of making, to what I would call that first generation. Second generation is went back to like concrete walls for some reason, and like making it look like real rock. And now I would say in that third generation, we're back to wood walls.
Yeah.
Which do you like best?
I like wood best. But I also think it's gone that direction for a couple of reasons. I think it made sense to make your walls look like outdoor walls. Right. That second generation. Yeah. They looked a little bit more professional instead of this like this wood structure people put up and climbed on. Yeah. And then you're getting the holds then, I forget what they're called, like a poly, it's not a poly, it was something else. Basically they broke pretty easily. You could chip them, things like that. Wasn't a lot of hold companies out there. So basically there wasn't a lot to choose from. There's a decent amount, but not a ton. And then slowly changing over to the holds we have now are like a polyurethane that basically like take a car and drive over them and you're not going to hurt them.
They'll be here forever.
Yeah.
They'll be here longer than rock will be here.
Exactly. They might wear down and get smooth, and they're not breaking easily. They're kind of holding up. So I think like a true lifeline of like actually using them is probably like closer to 5 to 7 years. But I mean, you can easily still use them past that. They just don't feel as gritty.
That brings up something that we regularly try to bring up at the dihedral. Like, whenever those old broken holds are done with, do we just throw them into the landfill or?
Now, I think we try and sell them. It's kind of been the go-to, like, hey, come pick these up so we can buy new ones. I also think that model's going away a little bit. But I don't know, like, I actually thought I got stronger because of the like slick holds, because you like learn to hold on to nothing, and then you like get new texture holds. You're just like gripping on to stuff that like you used to try really hard, really easily, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like it's almost like it's a good thing but a bad thing. But I mean, let's see here. Second generation, we were using tape to mark all of our holds because we didn't have like specific colors.
Right.
So that was kind of weird. It's kind of fun because then you could also just put like 5 pieces of tape on one hold, and like basically where we have 30 routes on our lower wall, we easily could have had 100.
Right.
It's just like
everywhere.
It was a madhouse. You're like, I don't know where I go next. What's going on? Like, And then as gyms evolve, the plastic change, we're getting color holds that we can choose. You can choose any color you want. And then I think the biggest reason we've gone back to the wood walls is the holds are getting bigger, and you have to screw them on. Like, you can bolt them in the middle, but they're going to spin, so you have to put screws in them. So with concrete walls, they tend to be a little more slightly warped a little bit. Mm-hmm. And now you have these flat panels that allow for it. And then, I don't know, maybe we're kind of getting into this like potential fourth generation. I don't know where it's going to go. It can go one of two ways, but you're seeing models where you're like screwing onto the walls a lot instead of using the bolt holes. And some gyms are just like straight going for it. They're like, cool, do it. Destroy the walls. We'll just retexture them in a year.
Yeah.
What's
the advantage of that?
Creativity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
You can do whatever you want.
Right.
Oh, I want my foot to come down half an inch. Done. Screwing it on. Maybe just make it just perfect, or for whatever the reason could be. There could be 1,000 reasons why I would do that. So I think gyms they're kind of in a weird place right now. We're like, I don't know where it's going to go. I know Waltopia is trying to make it so that basically all your holds kind of light up, and
yeah,
there's like they're trying to basically make it so every gym you walk into is the same. There's like one route setter, and you just like input their route into the wall and hit enter.
Right.
I don't think it's going to go that direction at all. I don't even think it's close. But
that's pretty horrible to me. It sounds like a utopian, dystopian.
Most definitely could see like a model where like all the holds are clear to some degree, and there's different color LEDs behind it, and you have to do some work to do that. But then like we're not, especially when you're buying holds now, it's kind of annoying. You're like, well, what do I have in green? I don't have enough slopers, so my next order I have to go get slopers. Sure. And like, but if I just get holds that light up any color I want, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the kilter board is kind of that way right now.
Right.
So like something like similar to that model, I could see it going that direction, mm-hmm. or I could see it going a different direction where people are just building their own walls and screwing them on and retexturing. Very ABP model.
Yeah.
Where like we'll build the walls, we'll build the volumes, and we'll just do this like crazy unique ideas. I think the bouldering projects have a really awesome idea, and it seems to be working really well for them. Mm-hmm. So it's my favorite model, and I would love to see it go that way more.
Whenever I first walked into ABP, you go out and you stand in the middle of it and you look around. It's like the climbing goes on forever. It never ends. It's like it's climbing heaven, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, I like it. It's hard. At least currently at Inspire, I try not to do it on our walls because there's no way to go and retexture it right now. Like we literally have to order a panel from Waltopia. So I think, it's weird. It's in that weird position where I have to go, do I take care of these walls or do I be a route setter and just like create a freedom and do what I want? I'm sure my boss goes take care of the walls.
Right.
So there's that fine line, I think some setters are like, screw it, whatever. I'm going to be creative. That's what you hired me to do. And we'll deal with it later,
What do you think are some of the things that would be necessary for running a successful climbing gym? Like where you have a strong community, strong setters. Like if you can look at different gyms that have similar walls or just similar populations,
yeah.
What separates success from an unsuccessful climbing gym?
That's a hard one. I think everybody kind of, I think it depends what you want out of it too, right? Yeah, I think it's a team thing where I think like if you're hired to do marketing, like that's what you do. You're invested into it. And I think also it's important for you to be a climber and understand. It kind of goes the same back to the route setter. Like you're always in the gym working. So you're like chatting with people and hearing what they like to say and like following trends and all these things. Like it's like that person has to be good at that. And then, your GM's good at talking to people and getting information, and your programs person is good at developing programs and getting people involved and working with the route setters to make sure that, if we're going to do this comp, that they're doing their part of it and the route setters are doing their part. And then same thing, like coaches, things like that. I still think it's spread. I'm seeing it more and more where it used to be when you got hired, it was like setter/coach, You did both. And now it's like just coach, just setter, and they're all full-time jobs somehow. Well, I understand the route setter. The coach is more of like what I'm impressed in. But, if you're sitting there putting workouts together for several different, courses and, working with your program manager to go like do these things, like, yeah, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I think the ones that you see that every single person in those positions are just all for it and they're working for the same thing is the ones that kind of go the best. Even then, like, it's just, I think some places it's like the market's better for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like coming from Austin when AVP opened and how many people they had walk in, like had been in the industry for 10 years in Austin and be like, where did these people come from? Like, I don't get it. They just presented it in a way that the people there were like, I'm in, I want to do this. Yeah. And I was blown away. And I think every single climber that, like, we all knew each other. There was one gym and all of us had the same question. We're like, where did these people come from? I don't get it. And it's just like the hip new thing. Maybe it was just the right time. Like they just walked in at the right time. I don't know. I don't have that answer, but it's working and you're seeing it across the country. Just everywhere you go. Everywhere. It's like, oh, what's this? This is a thing you can do? Cool.
Right.
I'm in.
So I came from a small Texas town where playing football is all you do. And so I guess whenever I discovered rock climbing, it's like, oh, you can do something that's not football. That's awesome.
But I think it helps to, if people are stronger and you just walk in, you're like, whoa, how did that guy just do that?
Oh, definitely.
And then all of a sudden there's like a realization of like, oh, wow, like that's cool. Like if everybody's just doing what you can do, maybe you're not as like, you're like, oh, that's cool. Like whatever. Like I can do everything here.
No, I think of it a lot like the notion of a Skinnerian box where, a rat in a maze, right? So if you put the cheese in the same spot every time, it's not going to learn. And so I think that's the same with us. Like if all we had was the exact same thing over. If we all did the same thing over and over again, where's the fun in that? Like it's good to fail and it's good to watch other people who are better than you because it kind of pushes you to want to be better. And there's something exciting about that. It doesn't get boring. It's very difficult for climbing to get boring if you're pushing yourself, if you're trying new things. And obviously that has a lot to do with what the setters are putting up. But we talked a lot about you setting. You're also a coach, a really good coach. You've coached a lot of,
thanks.
I guess, kids to like some really prestigious positions. And so I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about one, like your background in kinesiology and understanding movement and how that helps as a coach.
Sure. I mean, I would say as a coach, I'm definitely better on the movement side of like understanding and seeing it, like see them set up and be like, oh, you just need to like flag your right foot up just a little higher, or your hips need to go in, or like whatever you need to do. I also think that comes from just studying it as a route setter and myself,
Right.
The, like developing workouts and things like that are like not a strong suit of mine, I would say.
Yeah.
I definitely just kind of go off of what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, and maybe not having the best understanding of like combining it all. So I think I'm, these people that have helped get to nationals, I think it's not luck, but it could be better. And they're getting there because like, hopefully their understanding movement is like what's pushing it, but maybe they could have gone a lot further if I would have been better at the other part of it too, and I think it kind of goes back to like having great people in your gym where like, I know I don't understand that, but if you brought me on with the team, this guy's like, oh, I can make like physically strong, but you understand movement a lot better. So we're going to like combine our powers and create a super team. I don't know.
Sounds about right.
But I think it's hard. It's, it kind of goes back to that, like setting we developed the garage for that in our gym. It was like the specific reason was like, cool, let's do some crazy stuff in there. I don't think it's seen its full potential because we need more volumes. We need more big features. We need all these things that we're seeing at nationals that we just can't get our hands on because they're really expensive. And you see some gyms that are really talented kids and they have it in their gym. They see it. They work with it all the time. So I try and create the best I can, like give them scenarios of where they're going to be and what they're going to see. And just try and push them that way, you know.
And you must have an advantage with your background in setting for competition, like at least with what you have, allowing them to see what they're going to be facing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it helps.
Yeah.
But I have an understanding, like, well, what would I do? Like if I was setting for a comp, you know, like sometimes we emotionally mess with the kids in a weird way. So like in bouldering comps, we'll like set the first one to be like the second hardest. Like, cool, you have 6 climbs. First one you get on is the second hardest. Well,
Right.
Why would you do that? Well, the kids that are like mentally tough, they go, man, that was hard, but I still have 5 more. Like, I'm just going to keep it together. And then you have these other kids that are like instantly in tears and just like, well, you're out, you're done.
Right.
You know?
Oh, that's interesting.
So sometimes we play those games with them, you know? And I kind of bring that in like, hey, we'll do this to you. Like, this is a thing that happens. And we do it on purpose. And, you know, then you sit there and tell them, and then they walk out and they still cry. So,
So I'm wondering what's harder to deal with. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. The worst kids or the worst parents?
haven't had very many bad parents. And the ones that I have had, it hasn't even been that bad, you know? You just have an actual conversation with them and like, hey, this is how
That's
it
great.
is.
So it's not
And
like Little League softball where the
not yet. It's getting
Okay.
there. I think
Okay.
we literally had like this last comp we did at Inspire. There was like 2 parents like in the like cafeteria, like cafe yelling at each other, like straight up.
maybe from the popularity of the sport, you're bringing in.
Well, it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I think anytime there's more and more people and it's getting more and more competitive, like there's just like these weird balance of like, no, my kid needs the best. And like, you're messing with him to some degree. And that's why I'm mad now. I don't know. It's definitely a shift. Like it used to be like really calm. And they're like, oh yeah, go rock climb, have fun. And now it's just like, no, like go out, be the best. Like,
Yeah.
so.
So I was going to ask you a couple more personal questions, not
Sure.
deeply personal, but climbers sometimes get to a point where I might feel bored or burnt out, or they just kind of lose their initial stoke that they have for climbing. And I'm wondering if something like that has happened to you or does happen to you. And then what do you do to pull out of it? Or what would you recommend people do to?
That's great. I think I'm going through it right now, personally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure by the time this comes out, I'll be long gone. But I gave notice for my job now.
To a different place, right? By long gone.
I mean, who knows? Like, I don't know what's
That's
going to
a
happen
deep
tomorrow. I'm
level
going to
of
walk
loss
out
of
of this
stoke.
place and no. So I'm leaving Inspire. I think Inspire is a great company. I think it's been a really good experience, and I'm grateful for everything. But I definitely need like outdoor climbing and like-minded people around me to thrive, and I don't get that here. And when I like as a whole, like I'm not saying like people in the gym, like you kind of get that from them, but it is hard when you live in Houston where you're just like, hey, let's go outside. They're like, well, I have to go do this and like have these obligations and like this and this and this. You're just like,
Right.
yeah.
It's 120 degrees out.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, when I was in San Diego, it was just like, no question, like someone's going out and like, or you just show up to the crag and you're going to run into somebody, you know? And they're just, I don't know, like there's something in Austin. It was the same way. Like you knew what you were doing on the weekend. You're going rock climbing, you know?
Yeah, that's really hard.
And so, yeah, I'm just kind of in search for that again. And I think I tried to make it work here, and I was starting to do more trips. I was like just going out to Waco Tanks, which is a 12-hour drive on my own. So it's like, I'm doing it. I'm leaving on, Thursday morning, climbing Friday and Saturday, and I'm driving back.
Yeah,
Like
I would say
I'm going to drive
recently-
24 hours for 2 days of climbing.
Recently, that happened to you where, I mean, I'd seen you as happy as I'd seen you, maybe ever, where you drove out.
Oh,
Waco,
yeah.
12 hours. Morgan sent a project that I think you've been projecting for 10 years or something like
yeah,
this.
Babyface is this V7, which is I've sent I don't know how many different 8s, 9s, and 10s out in Waco. And for some reason, Babyface just refused to go for me for the last 10 years.
So if we asked you right now to explain the beta and every move from the start to the end? Do you have it memorized to the point that you could tell us?
I probably could. I could also tell you alternate betas that I tried, and were actually more successful for a long time. But when I did it, there's a very classic way to do it, which is like what you always see on the videos. And there's like a new modern one. There's a nice little heel hook you can find. And I really like heel hooks. So I was using that for a while and getting pretty successful. And when I got up to it this last time, I was like, no, like I refuse. It's going down the OG way. And I did it, and I was beyond psyched. And then the next day walked over and did something I've been trying for the last few years. Which honestly, like, was only like maybe my third or fourth like attempt on it, like, or session anyways. So it was more of a shock that it happened. I was like, "Whoa, cool!" And
it's a great weekend.
Just like had this like phenomenal weekend where I like last minute on my 35th birthday was like, I'm going to Waco. And yeah, like, and I think that was also like once I came off that high, it was like, oh, I need that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, this is, being here is not okay for me. There's something missing, and obviously I can't do this like 12-hour drive every weekend. It's just not feasible. So it's time to go hunt for that again. And maybe I don't know what that answer is yet. Maybe it's getting out of the industry, so climbing is climbing again instead of work.
Right.
Maybe it's going to a new gym that's allowing me to do things differently, and push to be a better setter again, which is something I feel like I've also been missing. Just training new people. It's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I've seen this move 1,000 times. Like, let's try something a little new and like a little different. And you're like, oh, like, and maybe that's on me for not being a good teacher too. Like, I don't know, but it's hard when you're in that mode to also be pushing your own standards, especially when you're not having anybody that's like kind of at the same level doing it for you or with you, where you go, oh, that was really cool. I'm going to try and add that into my setting and climbing. But I've also had the climbing like ups and downs too, where you just, for whatever reason, like you're just kind of not feeling it. I've almost never stopped climbing, but I've definitely just gone in and like done 3s and 4s and then like rolled out. Be like, cool, I'm happy now, like whatever. And then for whatever reason, like, I don't know, I'm feeling good one day and I do something hard and I'm just like kind of go back on this uptick.
There it is.
Other things I've done is just like go do something out of my comfort zone. So like when I kind of get comfortable, I go like, okay, it's time to go do something new. Maybe I'll go do some multi-pitch, which I'm typically not comfortable on, or go do trad climbing, or go do a highball boulder, or it could be all sorts of different things I'm doing, and sometimes that usually gets me psyched, or just a trip. I don't know. There's so many answers to that. Like, I don't,
it's always come back.
Yeah, always. I don't think I'll ever lose climbing. Like, I think if I like went a month, I would just be like raging on somebody. And then they would just put a climbing wall in front of me and I'd be okay.
Let's just do this.
But it's, I don't know. I don't want to, I always get this weird question like, well, what else do you do besides like rock climbing and setting? And I don't have an answer. I watch Netflix and on occasion play video games. Oh my goodness, Netflix. What was You're Dead to Me was the last one I think I watched. That was a fun one.
What are your thoughts on Dave Chappelle?
Oh, I love Dave Chappelle. Yeah, it's a constant. If I can't think of something, I go to Dave Chappelle.
On a first name basis with them.
Totally.
Dave.
Oh, after this, hopefully, maybe we can sit down and do
we'll
a
make it
podcast
happen.
together.
We'll get him on the podcast. Do a guest interview.
So one of the most important things to us at the Dihedral, and kind of the reason that we do everything that we do, is we want to introduce climbing to the person that really needs it. The person that, maybe they're in a rough situation and they could use a physical activity to take them out of that. Maybe it's just someone who's a little scared but needs something to do on the weekends. What would you say to that person to encourage them to try it out?
Obviously going to the gym, or go get a guide, like go outside and try it. I think depending where you're at, but go in. I think every gym is set up for you to walk in and experience climbing, like without any help or very little. You do a 15-minute introduction and then you're set free and you're going, if you need more, sign up for one of their classes, go do a private lesson. Like you're going to get a wealth of knowledge real fast, probably more than you ever thought you would get. And just go and enjoy it. Be ready to fall, be ready to fail. That's it. It's a never ending process. I always try and remind my kids the same way. They're like, "Oh, I'm falling." I'm like, "Yep." And you always will. It's never going to stop. Like, go look at Chris Sharma, go look at, Adam Andra, any of them. Like once they send something, it's literally like they come down and they're like, "I'm happy for 5 minutes. What's the next thing?" Yeah. So yeah, I just go in, sign up, go do it. And I think it's always the people that, I think you always know your first time. I don't think I've met a person that was like, yeah, after like the 5th time, I finally realized it was for me. And it's like, no, you knew it. You knew it the first time you walked in. So you'll know, like you'll go in, you'll do it. You'll either like it or you'll either love it or hate it. I think there's some people that like it and they do it because maybe their friends do it and they last for maybe a few months, but.
Yeah, you kind of know. I know you've climbed forever in a lot of different places, but I'm wondering if you can at least share one story of your choice of one of the craziest climbing experiences or expeditions that you've been on.
Oh, goodness. Craziest. I think I took a first date out to Enchanted Rock at night. So, and we did the backside of the dome, which is 3 pitches, 3 pitches. And I couldn't find the first 5 bolts.
All right. Were they a climber or no? This was just the first date?
Yeah, I met her in the gym.
Okay.
Not nearly as experienced as me. I think she'd been outside a handful of times. And so, I just, the first pitch on the backside is 130 feet and they're spaced out 20-foot bolts. So, I'm 75 to 100 feet, no gear.
Headlamps.
1 headlamp.
Oh my God.
She didn't have the headlamp. So I finally found a clip, got to the anchor, brought her up, did the second pitch, and I got set up, built my anchor, and went to lower the headlamp to her and got it stuck in a crack. So I had to wrap down, get it out of the crack, wrap all the way down to her, give it to her, and then just pulled up on my gree back up. And then we finished the pitch and we just went back to the car, slept, and then drove out.
Was there a second date?
We dated for a very long time.
All right,
Yeah.
Morgan.
But oddly enough, funny story, one of my experiences of I needed something different in life to do is I went back to that exact same climb with a friend and was literally freaking out and French aiding and grabbing draws and just not in a good headspace. And it's kind of funny how I can go from one to just woo, I'm fine, whatever, to just I'm going to die today.
I do that all on one climb sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was, like I said, I knew I needed something different and I hadn't multi-pitched in a while. And yeah, it's obvious that I needed to do something different because my mind was obviously not in rock climbing and being comfortable with it.
That's great. And you're in that position now. You're not even sure what happens next. You're just taking a leap of faith.
Yeah. I have no idea.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's brave.
I knew I needed to leave. I gave a 6 months notice because I wanted the gym to find the correct people and have plenty of time. And obviously gave me a little buffer to save a little bit more cash and hopefully figure out life. But yeah, I have no idea. I'm trying to get in, go out to Waco for the season if I can get into the guide training. I'm talking to a few gyms about working there, considering just going back to school and starting a new career. Thinking about starting my own freelance route setting company. I'm kind of all over the place right now. I'm making small moves with each one and kind of getting feelers to see where everything's going. Obviously, if these gyms don't work out, then I start moving towards these other ones. And
right.
So I'm just making small steps, and I'm gonna go with what happens.
Well, I think we'll have to have a part 2, and
You'll have to come back and let us know how this
What
story
happened?
ends.
Yeah, I'm in football now. I'm a football coach.
Well, Morgan, thanks for coming on, man. I'm really excited to see where this takes you.
Appreciate it.
I think we all are.
For sure. Thanks, Morgan.
Oh, well, thank you guys.